Good evening. I'm going to call the Select Board meeting for Monday, May 20th, 2024 to order to announce that we will be going into executive session. And I'll announce this now and again when we return, but we are going to table the discussion on the HARC committee until Tuesday, May 28th. Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the board enter into executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with all non-union personnel and to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, as well as pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant in aid requirement, the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, 22FG, to review, approve, and/or discuss the possible release of executive session meeting minutes dated March 4th, 2024, April 1st, 2024, April 8th, 2024, and April 29th, 2024.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Evening, I'm calling the Select Board meeting for Monday, May 20th, 2024, back to order. We were in executive session earlier this evening, and we did not take any action on item A, and we did approve the minutes on item B. I also just want to announce for anybody who might be watching or attending for the discussion on the Harwich Accessibility Rights Committee, HARC, that we will be tabling that discussion tonight and bringing it back next Tuesday, because we'll be meeting on Tuesday due to the holiday, which is May 28th. And if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also, before I go to public comments and announcements, as required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chair prior to the start of the meeting. And seeing nobody, we'll go on to public comments and announcements. And the first item is to recognize Harwich resident Ella Lombard, who will turn 103 on May 21st, so tomorrow. And Jeff, I will go.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and what a special night this is. I will begin by saying those who know Ella are truly fortunate, and those who have not met Ella are missing out on someone and something very special. Ella was born in 1921 to parents John and Amelia Rose of Harwich. Ella was the 19th of 21 children. Ella has 3 children of her own, Charles III, John, and Phyllis. I am proud to say that I know all 3 of Ella's children, and they are also wonderful, wonderful human beings. This lovely lady has 5 grandchildren, 8 great-grandchildren, and 2 great-great-grandchildren. Ella has lived her entire 103 years on Main Street in Harwich. Her childhood home and her current home are about 400 yards apart, give or take a little. I am told, Ella, that you did domestic work for both Judge Hudson and Colonel Cummings many, many years ago, and that Virginia Pina is responsible for your love and talent in quilting and painting. Ella, I truly could go on and on. 103 years, you certainly can accumulate an awful lot of unbelievable things, and I only have a little bit of time here. But you have impacted so many of us for the better. You have been and continue to be a gift to all who know you. But for now, I will bring this special moment to a close. Ella, your town of Harwich wishes to acknowledge you tonight on the eve of your birthday, as well as the 103 years that you have chosen to spend here in the town of Harwich. We wish you a very happy birthday tomorrow, and we will plan on seeing you back here next year to celebrate number 104. Happy birthday, Ella. Would Ella like to say anything? No? Okay. She certainly deserves that right, but Charlie, her son, I think.
I'd
Happy to hear
just
from
like
you.
to tell you, the board and the town, thank you very much for acknowledging her. It means a lot to her, and thank you again.
Absolutely, and it's good to see your whole family here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You didn't think I was going to let you get away with this, did you? In case anyone doesn't know, Ella, I had a very special moment with her in December, and she's featured in the Harwich magazine, so please, she's a gift to all of us and quite refreshing to spend time with. One of the memories that I had during our conversation on her birthday last year, I think, she told the children she wanted a snow blower or a leaf blower. You got the leaf blower. Happy birthday, Ella.
Happy birthday, Ella, and we're so blessed to have you for the 103 years in town, and we look forward to next year. Thank you for joining us tonight. You're such an amazing human being, so thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment and announcements? Hearing nobody, can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
Yes, you may. And Ella, this is going to get very boring, so now's your opportunity. You can stay, you can all stay as long as you want, but this, it's not going to get any better the rest of the way. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course. Madam Chair, I move that we approve the Select Board meeting minutes for the following dates: May 6, 2024, May 7th, 2024, May 13th, 2024.
Moved and seconded. The only thing I want to point out is, and I know these were just the meeting minutes from town meeting nights, but we didn't do the Pledge of Allegiance because we did it at the meeting and such, so just omit that part. And then, Pete?
On the 6th, the minutes of the 6th,
Oh, yeah, the other, yeah.
I believe it talks that we reconsidered, but then it didn't talk that we actually decided to support the FinCom's recommendation.
Right, and actually, the other part of that that I meant to mention was that the Select Board did not join the Finance Committee in the media
The
room.
chair of the FinCom came into our
Came in,
room.
yeah, Peter Hughes came into.
I think that was part of my motion.
Yeah,
Perfect.
perfect, so we'll just amend those.
And the only other thing I had was on the 7th, sorry, Don.
While we're still on the 6th, that
Yeah.
the reconsideration vote passed, and that we actually then subsequently agreed to have the same position as the
Right,
Finance
take no
Committee.
action.
And that,
Right, right,
Also part of my
Yeah.
motion.
And then on the 7th, I know there was a very brief meeting, but I don't believe Michael was there at that time.
oh, yeah, I think not. And the Pledge of Allegiance, again, we didn't do that, so, just with those amendments, then, all in favor? Aye. 5-0. And new business.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
make a motion? I move that we approve the 2024 reappointment list, presented reappointment list with the following redactions. I'd like to remove Sandra Hall, Brooks Academy Museum Commission, full term. Sandra Hall, Bylaw Charter Review Committee, full term. Noreen Donahue, full term, on the Bylaw Charter Review Committee, and Carol Fuller, full term on the Golf Committee.
thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Don?
well, predictably, I was going to take issue with the Sandra Hall part. I'm not sure, I mean, you know how interested I've been with the charter for many years. I was chair of that committee myself for a period of time. I'm not sure if there's anybody more conversant with the charter than Sandy, and I'm not sure, I think I profoundly disagree with your position that it's a conflict of interest if she's pursuing a charter commission, because that would be something that has to be sought by running for office, first of all. And second of all, nobody's saying that they're changing the entire form of government anyway. I think it's a mistake to delete talent from a committee, and I certainly don't know why you wouldn't include her on the Brooks Academy Commission, because to my knowledge, there's nothing that's been done that hasn't been it hasn't gone through here, unless you're unhappy with the entire Brooks Academy Commission.
Also, I would just say, and Pete, did you have a comment?
No, go ahead. I do, but I'll listen to what you have to say.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I guess for clarification, this is the 2024 reappointment list. I know it's been a couple of years since I sat here. Did this not go to the interview committee, or it's just because they're up for renewal, we don't send it to the interview committee?
Right, they're up for renewal. Go ahead, Don.
No, we had actually agreed on all of the other people. There was no point in meeting. And since we knew we were not going to agree on the points tonight, it would come out as a 1-1 vote. There was no point in meeting for that either. So Michael wanted to throw it to the board, and I fully agree with that.
And if I could just expand on
Sure.
that. Pete, just for your knowledge, I did call Don on this. There was only one name that we didn't know about ahead of this. So Carol Fuller, we had a long conversation a long time ago and agreed that at reappointment time that we weren't going to reappoint. That's why the golf committee hasn't met. On Noreen Donahue, she called and said she no longer wanted to be on the committee. So it was only the one name that Don and I disagreed, and the mechanism for disagreeing is to bring it before the full board. So we agreed that there was no point in having a meeting.
Okay.
And back to your point, you know, it's up to, as you know, Pete, and all of us know, it's up to the select board to appoint and reappoint. And at this point in time, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the different negativity that's been out there, but I would say that, you know, when you're dealing with a committee that has a charge, and then departing ways and wanting a commission, that's up to anybody's, you know, decision if they want to go that route. But ultimately, to be part of a committee and to be serving a purpose is fine, but when you don't like the purpose that maybe the select board has a discussion, and you attack administration, you attack other people, staff inadvertently, and, you know, select board's elected, so we sign up for this stuff. But, you know, staff and town administration and department heads, et cetera, to be maligned, I don't see the positive in that in terms of committees. Our committees people are volunteering to join and be part of a committee to move it forward. And open discussion and disagreement is perfectly fine on any committee. But I don't know why it's appropriate to take it to social media. And that's some of my issue. Don?
And to that end, Madam Chair, I'm unclear as to why you're including her to not be renominated for the Brooks Academy Commission. I get what you're saying about
Yeah, well,
the charter.
I think because the forum isn't social media, the forum is the committee and the Brooks Academy Commission. I mean, those are your venues, and that's where the discussion should happen, instead of when something doesn't go the way you want or how you foresaw it, doesn't mean that your next forum, if you're choosing to serve on a committee, then your allegiance should be to that committee, and you certainly have every right to disagree with whoever you want on your committee. But to then take it to the court of the social media platform, I don't think is appropriate. And please correct me if I'm wrong, because we sign up for it, like I said. But, you know, participating as a committee member, how do you know that those people aren't then intimidated by the actions that they're seeing outside of whatever meeting they're sitting in as a board member?
I'm not going to prolong the discussion, but I do know that I don't want to vote against the entire roster of people, so I'm going to ask to amend the motion to include reappointment on the Brooks Academy Commission for Sandy Hall, so that we can be on the record.
So that's your motion. Do you have, and does anyone want to second that?
The request is for what?
To amend his motion to include her on the, for reappointment on the Brooks Academy Commission.
I guess I don't have a problem with doing this. I guess I don't know Robert's rules of law that well. So you're going to amend Michael's motion?
Yeah, because otherwise, the only mechanism I'd have is either abstain or to vote against
So-
the entire recommendation, which I don't want to do.
And I'll just tell you where I'm coming from. Thankfully, I don't use social media, and I'm thankful for a number of reasons. So I'm not, I guess I'm in the dark as to some of the things that you folks are alluding to. Certainly, I hear scuttlebutt in town, but I don't know anything factual. Truthfully, I'd like an opportunity to talk with Ms. Hall, to at least to hear what she has to say about it. That's my sense. So I don't have an issue with giving Dawn a second to put her back onto the Brooks Academy, but I guess I'm also not inclined necessarily to vote against her on the bylaw charter review. The little bit I know about Sandra is her history with the town and you know, former select board member, and her time devoted to the charter. But again, if there are underlying issues that are greater than what I'm aware of, I'm willing to entertain that. But at this point, I don't have enough facts as to what's transpired to necessarily vote against her.
Don?
Yeah, I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but I'm going to withdraw my motion because if that gets turned down, it would have to be subject to a reconsideration vote if Pete does what he wants to do. And then we're going to be really like bogged down in procedures. So I just
So you've
assume.
withdrawn.
I've withdrawn it just as soon because nobody seconded it yet. And that will leave just an overt vacancy in each position. So that would allow Pete to do whatever he wants to do. And they're either going to vote to put her there or not put her there, but at least we don't have to vote for a reconsideration to even have the discussion, because otherwise it's going to get cumbersome.
Yeah, so you've removed your motion, so currently the motion on the floor is as presented by Michael.
And that would leave those two vacancies
Right.
intact.
So,
Just a brief comment, because this is something everybody knows what I feel about this and where I stand. The word bully has often been used against me, and there's no greater bully in this town besides somebody that sits behind their keyboard and throws a shot from a distance. Don made Ms. Hall aware tonight that this was going to transpire, because he told me that he was going to call her and have the conversation about it. She's not here. She chose not to show up and to defend herself. She has the right to defend herself in this room. We, however, do not have the right under the law to defend ourselves against the bullying that goes on her platform. And I feel very strongly that a lot of people are against running for things or wanting to be on things because of that behavior. And anyone that wants to go on and read it, which many, many people call and fill in, to your point about being on social media, I get screenshots. So I get to
Me
see the
too.
comments and the arguments.
yeah.
And she's created an atmosphere there where you don't even have to use your own name to attack a person and their character. Sally Urbano is one of her, I would say, minions. And she goes on there under a fake name and completely attacks town administrator and the board members that she does not like. Currently, 3 board members on the board. Now you haven't been on long enough to make a decision that doesn't necessarily agree with Ms. Hall, so you haven't been attacked yet, to my knowledge. But it's on every platform that she can get on. If you don't agree with her, she immediately goes after you. And to a point where if you did it in school, you'd be thrown out. If anyone did it in a workplace, they'd be gone. But under the guise of social media, you can say and do anything you want, and this elected body can't go back. And for me, that person and that character is not what we should be putting on our committees. And I've many, many, many people call and ask why we continue to reappoint. Above and beyond all of that, she was one of the original authors of the charter. She has expressed now through, and she has a committee, she's expressed having a charter commission to take the committee right out of it and to go to elected officials. You're running unopposed again tomorrow. Who's going to run for said commission?
Right.
Sandra Hall and her friends? Because that's what I see. And I don't think that should be something that this board condones and that we put up with. And again, it's indefensible. We cannot go on there and say anything. There is flat-out lies that are written on that site, written by her, that we can't actually go on and correct other than to the people that ask us. Now, I talk about attack on board members. To my knowledge, in my 10 years, the only one that hasn't been attacked is Don Howe. Sandra was one of his biggest supporters when he first ran. She was my biggest supporter when we first ran, until we disagreed. And then the table turns. But we can say what we can say in this room, where people can get up and defend it themselves and debate it. But these conversations don't happen in these rooms. They don't happen on town meeting floor. But she gets traction on a social media platform, which I would say 80% of the people on there are on there for the entertainment. I'll close with that. And to the reporter in the room tonight, I'd be happy to sit with you, and I can articulate as many things as you want. But we shouldn't be condoning bullies, and whether it be Brooks Academy Museum, Commission, or Charter Bylaw, I stand with both of them, because it's the character of the person that I don't think should be on that. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Michael. Don?
Yeah, two things. First of all, you're conflating two different issues, Michael. In the period of time you're talking about, I have had a boodle of 4-1 votes go against me. So it's not me, it's the positions I'm taking that you're actually talking about. But secondarily, on the phone, you said to me that you were inclined to reappoint her to the Brooks Academy Commission, but not to the Charter Commission, and that is what I called her to convey to her. Not that she wasn't going to get appointed either.
So I'm just going to go back to the motion that currently stands, and just to reiterate that we're talking about, I don't know why, based on at least my feeling, I don't know why you would say one committee's okay and the other one isn't. I mean, you know, if we're looking for people to serve in whatever capacity, on whatever board, we already have multiple seats we can't fill, and then we wonder why that is, to the earlier point raised about the negativity and the things that go on when people just don't agree. I don't see other boards taking it to social media. I'm not on that page, so I can't specifically comment. I can only tell you the same thing. I get screenshots of all the negative things and all the disparaging remarks about different board members, or that I'm a clueless chair and these things. You know, that's all well and good, but to that point, we're talking about things openly. And to Michael's earlier point, anyone can come here and speak to us and say, you're wrong on this or you're wrong on that. That doesn't happen. And ultimately, you're part of a committee. If I'm sitting on a committee where somebody's raging on social media, I'm probably not going to say exactly what I wanted to say, because I don't want the pushback. So that's not right. That's not why people volunteer. People are coming in and volunteering their time, and they should feel free to speak up and say what they believe. So the motion currently is, as Michael presented, which is with the omission of Noreen Donahue, Sandy Hall on the two different boards, and Carol Thayer. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah,
Sorry.
the only thing I'll say is I agree wholeheartedly with the bullying language that you're talking about. I don't think bullying should be tolerated by anybody. I also have heard from people as to why they may or may not serve on committees. And, you know, I don't think it's all on that one individual, let's face it, right? There's
Oh, yeah.
multiple reasons. I don't have enough information to vote against her tonight. So my vote will be against the motion, but I certainly respect your opinions, and I'll do my own homework. Now, with that said, I don't want any damn screenshots, so don't send them my way, people. Not interested, thank you.
All right, so, yeah, Don?
Just to go back to what you just said, Pete, if you do that and we do try to revisit this after you discuss this, it's still going to require a reconsideration vote, because the other way, it just was a flat-out vacancy.
What other way?
Just voting the list with their omission, because that was not part of his motion to appoint. Anything else muddies this up, and you're going to wind up
Oh,
having...
understood, okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. So currently, the motion and the second is what I just described.
With the 4 omissions.
Yes. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
I was an aye, because it's clarification.
Okay. And Don,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was an aye.
you're an aye? I'm
For the
just-
reasons I said before.
I know, I'm just
If he-
clarifying, I didn't see you vote,
Yeah,
so
I did.
hear you vote, is what I mean. 5-0. Okay?
Madam Chair, if I could, your next item is the miscellaneous reappointments. And I will tell you that as you vote, you have letters of appointment coming around that reflect what you just voted, and then 2 other documents that will relate to the miscellaneous appointments. In your packet, there is the list, I think, that you were, relying upon with the memo attached, so I apologize for missing this. On page 2, it says the 2024 reappointment list, new term expiration 1 year, 2025, and 2-year, 2026. You'll see that Larry Ballantyne is listed as Affordable Housing Trust. However, Mr. Ballantyne is appointed by me as town administrator. He's my designee, and the term that I've ascribed to that matches my contract term, so that should actually say 6/30/2025. So for Larry Ballantyne on the Affordable Housing Trust, his term is scheduled to expire 6/30/2025.
Okay.
I know that his reappointment is not part of your letters, so I think that's just the list that's available. And then lastly, I think you have a miscellaneous committee reappointments for approval.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to note that, I think 5 items down is the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority representative. So I have been appointed previously by the board, and the term was set to expire 6/30/2025.
Okay.
Certainly if you're just reaffirming these, but I think that blank should have my name there. Everything else is accurate.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Thank
Is
you.
it point of information?
Sure.
While I don't agree that it should work like that, it is in writing that the appointment of Larry Ballantyne is derivative of the town administrator appointing him. I don't see that we have the authority to appoint, because that's solely,
That's what I'm saying. I believe it's
I
on
don't
the
think that
list.
that should even be part of the motion, because you have designated him for whatever period of time that you have in your contract.
We're in agreement. My understanding is the list shows who's on it. The letters that you have, you do not have an appointment letter for Larry. So I think that was just meant as informational.
Okay.
Right.
Just,
Yep.
we agree then.
So just for clarity, the 2024 reappointment list with the new term expiration 1 year, 2025, and 2-year, 2026 will be Greg Garber for Shellfish Constable, Brendan Lowney for Affordable Housing Trust, and David Robinson for Constables.
Yeah, as long as Larry's listed as a designee on the website.
Right, I mean, but
Yeah.
for reappointment
Yeah,
purposes,
right.
he's off of this
Right.
list. And then, so,
Do you want a motion for that, Madam Chair?
yes, please.
I move that we approve the 2024 reappointment list, new term expiration 1 year, 2025, and 2-year, 2026, to include only Greg Garber, Shellfish Constable, full term expiring 6/30/2025. Brendan Lowry, the Affordable Housing Trust, full term 6/30/2026. And David Robinson, Constable, full term expiring 6/30/2025.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, Joe?
And I believe you're also doing the miscellaneous appointment?
Yes, we are, but do you want us to do them separate? 'Cause
So it's
there's
listed on your agenda. I think you could have done the 1 and 2 years earlier. You can do it now, but you should also do the miscellaneous.
Okay, we'll add the miscellaneous. Will you add that?
Yes, I would like to add to my motion to vote to approve the miscellaneous committee reappointments for approval as presented.
Still second.
Okay. Moved and
Does that work?
seconded.
Wednesday to sign these.
And that includes Joe Powers as Cape
Powers.
Cod Regional Transit Authority representative.
Still.
6/30/2025 expiration, so thank you. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. 5-0. Okay.
I move that we vote to approve the annual Harwich Police Department reappointments as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
If I,
Oh,
Madam Chair.
sorry, yeah,
I'm going to abstain.
okay.
In case anybody's not aware, my stepson is a police officer in town.
Oh, okay, yep, perfect. So 4 and 1 abstention. Okay, next item,
I think we're at Town Administrator update on traffic studies,
all right,
old business.
because we're holding the Hark.
Hark.
Yep. So Joe?
Sorry, my pen has to go as fast as you all, thank you. Old business, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So under old business old business B, I apologize, I know that A has been held off. On this matter, this is my first of updates regarding an action that you folks had directed back on April 29th. And so if it helps for the benefit of the board, you should have had, I think attached to this as well, a report that the deputy police chief was able to acquire from his colleagues in the town of Dennis regarding the project that's the town of Dennis is working on the Love Lane Housing Assistance Corporation Family Transition Center. So as I've written in my report, I've been right to work on these traffic studies after town meeting. I had a very in-depth and good conversation with Steve Rhodes. I do want to emphasize that people recognize that the guy that helps us with streets is named Steve Rhodes. He is our solid representative from VHB. Steve and I are waiting to connect with Steve Tupper and Colleen Maderos. They represent the Transportation Division of the county. They are actively closing out their process on traffic studies in communities. So you may be aware that there are a number of devices they had around town in years past that were meant to be updated regularly. I believe there's the latest data set that they did goes back to 2019. So Steve Rhodes and I are hoping to connect with them to say, please extend those because they cover all the areas that you talked about at your meeting on April 29th. And so I can respond to any questions based on the memo or anything I just presented.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions from board members? Michael?
Yes, Joe, any time frame indicated, and what further conversations did you have with them about the potential of what's coming forward? Is there a timeline on this? I want to get my hard hat on before the new emergency starts.
With regard to which item?
With regard to a new traffic study, looking at everything that is going to take place on all these different parts of these intersections.
So that's the conversation that Steve Rhodes and I want to have with Steve Tupper and Colleen Maderos. They have, I think in every area that you've talked about on April 29th, they have the devices to do the studies. They haven't updated them. So we're looking to get in front of them to say the town wants the traffic studies in those areas for those reasons. Steve Tupper confirmed receipt on Friday, but he has not followed up yet.
I can expand on that?
Yep.
I'd like the board to consider allowing me to be involved in these conversations. I think it's important that the select board's message and that we get the volume of information that we're looking for, so I'd like to be involved in those conversations. That's one. This thing keeps expanding, and we're not getting any information. And I know it just got brought up 2 weeks ago, but, tonight the planning board in Dennis was meeting on 79 families, 177 individuals moving into the old Eagle Pond Nursing Home. That's happening as we're talking. And we have absolutely no data except for the traffic study that really shouldn't mean a whole lot from the town of Dennis because they're not living there yet. So, and it's off-agenda topic but related. Tonight, that the developer is asking for the Dover Amendment, which I'm not even 100% sure what the Dover Amendment is, other than the fact that it would make it so that the builder would not have to go through a full site plan review over there. So we don't have a seat at the table, and I think that this board really should have a seat at the table with Dennis. We heard from our public safety officials that they anticipate that there's gonna be an increased volume of calls over there, both fire and police. So I don't think it's responsible of this board to wait until it happens and then react to it. So I think that we need to initiate some conversations, whether it be a full board-to-board meeting, town administrator and a board member in the town of Dennis. But I think we need a lot more information about what's going on over there. And then further, Julie, and part of the goals and objectives tonight would be a conversation about starting some conversations publicly with the town administrator and the board with Pine Oaks Village. Because again, once these get approved and once these applications go in, we lose our ability to negotiate anything. And given the time is June, basically, Pine Oaks Village told Jeff Handler and myself in a meeting that they expect that they're gonna turn their application in October. We're losing the ability to have those conversations. So I wanna put a emphasis on emergency on the traffic study so that we have some real information and that we can put the assumptions in of all of these projects so that we have a basis for an argument if we wanna change things. And I would reiterate that we really need a seat at the table in Dennis, because if they're now going to make it so that there's not a full site plan review, we have no idea what we're actually gonna be looking at. And you heard our fire chief say it, they respond and get there first. So how much can these roads take, how much can these residents take, and when are we gonna get in front of it?
So just on that note, some of the information that Megan had provided, I was looking, she gave us the link, and I think that the Dennis Planning Board, was looking at the
I
Cape
believe
Cod
if,
Commission.
the link is from my memo.
Oh, it's from your memo,
Correct.
sorry. But on that note, the link, when you follow the most up-to-date, I think that they're going back, pushing back to the Cape Cod Commission as a DRI to look at that. And they also point out in their memo that there's been no conversation with Harwich in terms of safety, et cetera, and traffic. So I think that Dennis is obviously assessing those things as well, at least considering the Harwich effect. Just pointing that out.
Thank you, Julie.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for everybody's edification, because it hasn't been said here so far, you can't get to Eagle Pond without going through Harwich. There is no way. It backs, even though the town lines exist and the buildings themselves seem to be in Dennis, there are wetlands back there and you can't get to it. It has to happen through. And to the other point, I sat on the planning board in the late 90s when they actually did want to build Eagle Pond. And it is an issue for us because at the time we were discussing, well, if you're going to have residents, how many visitors are they going to have? How many trucks are going to come in to supply you with food and other supplies? And that road is really old and really small. So that's my first comment. The second one is, I have no problem, Michael, if you're doing that, but these things are all a point in time. The Pine Oaks thing is playing out over 20-plus years. The Eagle Pond thing is happening right now. But even before that, I hope you include in the mix of that, at 124, the prospect of a YMCA sitting in front of the tech building, because that's much more near-term than even the Pine Oaks project. I mean, that's close to happening. So that has an impact on all of the roads, Route 6, Queen Anne Road, Route 124, and I would argue possibly even Long Pond Road, because we don't have too many east-west roads in this town.
I'd agree with Michael on the urgency, right? So, I know Michael's had some doubts on previous traffic studies conducted. I looked at the summary provided by Deputy Considine, and I know it's a different use of the facility at Eagle Pond, but I find it hard to believe that there's gonna be that much of a reduction in traffic on a daily basis at that site. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I would love for us to have our own studies conducted. Again, what we talked about a couple weeks ago that you're pursuing is, you know, what can our current conditions handle? And then, you know, we probably need to dig a little deeper into what some of these are actually gonna produce. And then make some hard decisions based on that, or at least some hard arguments, I should say. As far as connecting with Dennis, I'd love to be part of that as well, so I don't know if you're open to that, but I'd love to be part of that conversation as well.
So I think on both of those, the initial should be a joint board meeting so that we're all informed, and then we can certainly have two people, you know, act as contacts. You know, in terms of the Dover amendment, I'm just looking at the planning board documents, and it exempts agricultural, religious, and educational uses from certain zoning restrictions by limiting what zoning requirements apply to these uses. And then there is multiple, I'm not going to read them all, but that's basically the Dover amendment allows them to not have applicable zoning in this scenario because they're also claiming an educational use. And I know that I looked at the traffic study in this document as well as the traffic study that Deputy Considine shared with us. So all of it is questionable. I mean, they're talking about the number of staff that they had at the nursing home and the time frames of the coming and going of the staff, but we have no way of knowing those 79 families that could end up there. And again, the other point that the planning board makes is that locating all these people in this particular area is putting them sort of in a remote area with not a lot of access to anything. So that's another problem, which again, you know, that it's a problem for those being located there, but it also presents the problem of the comings and goings and how that goes about, because there's no specific bus, and they're talking about a dedicated possible bus coming by, but there's been no hardcore information on that. So I agree, I think we need a conversation on that property and the overall traffic study as well. So I look at it as like two conversations, right? One with Dennis and one with Joe, whenever you can arrange some type of conversation with the commission to talk to us about all of the applications that we believe are coming our way, though none of them are currently in front of us. So,
And that is what I've communicated to the commission.
great, thank you. So we'll stay tuned for that meeting.
But I definitely want to support what, you know, Pete had said. This is really, it's not about who it is, it's not about particularly where it is as a facility, but it's about trip generations. I'd be hard put to understand how the trip generations could be lower for a demographic that is like younger than me, for sure. People who might be able to get a work permit at some point, which would create a heck of a lot of traffic. I mean, what they had before was staff, people who were in beds or, you know, just non-ambulatory for the most part, and some guests. But on top of that, they had truck deliveries. Now, nobody has had any discussions that I am aware of on our end about, okay, they're going to have food there, and if they do, how's it getting there? Because typically that happens in trucks. Again, that road's really beat up. It's not even a tertiary road. It's really old, windy, and I know we were players when it was originally approved in the Harwich Planning Board. So, I mean, just by history, we should be able to have that conversation because you can't get there except through Harwich.
Julie, one more thing.
Yep.
Thank you for that, Don. I don't want to get lost on, there's a lot more activity out there as well. So and that's why it's important to me that it's not just the town administrator listening to the five of us in a meeting and then going back to the conversation,
Right.
that a board member or two board members be present so that they can bring up anything else that the board says. And then to Don's point, and I just want to put it on the record yet again, Pine Oaks Village, I get that it's over a 20-year period, but without having the conversation about what could potentially be major road reconstruction or mitigation now, because they're not applying for 3 permits. They're applying for 1 permit for a reason. So once that permit gets approved, then that project is a reality. And if it happens over 20 years, maybe some of us won't be paying attention in 20 years, but the problem's going to exist. And I think that we need to at least put that argument out there and have that conversation now in totality with everything else that's going on.
I likely wouldn't be part of that discussion in 20 years.
But just for clarification on the traffic conversation, my recommendation is initially, we have a presentation to the board, and then 2 members after that can go, act with the town administrator and whoever else is present at those meetings. But I think it'd be helpful for all of us to have that initial meeting. And then if you could reach out to Dennis in terms of opening lines of communication so that we could have further conversations with our counterparts in Dennis, I think that would be helpful as well. Any other, yep.
So I just want to clarify what I had in the memo. In researching my conversation with the county, I noticed that they have on their transportation site what they referred to as permanent traffic counts in Harwich. They went to a certain time frame. So I think it's important for us to have them immediately re-energize those so we have data going forward, as well as then, I think it's entirely appropriate to have the commission come before you folks at a public meeting.
Right.
So my first ask is going to be, please resume those standard traffic studies that were meant to be permanent. And it covers all of the areas, not just this particular area in North Harwich, but certainly covers that. It covers everywhere you were asking on April 29th.
Okay, great. Any other discussion on that item? No? Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
And
Madam
then-
Chair, if I could, on contracts.
Mhm.
So what you're being, well, first of all, you'll see in the packet that there are 2 memos. The first is my memorandum, which is explaining the memorandum that the Assistant Town Administrator presented to me. As you may know, that given that the Great Sand Lakes construction project, which is essentially part of Phase 3, but different from the major project, that requires a designer selection committee. And so the designer selection committee received the 2 bids that the town received from GHD Inc. and EDR, which is short for Environmental Design and Research. The designer selection committee then has to grade based on a standard process from the Inspector General's office. They did that. So what you have in front of you is my recommendation as Chief Procurement Officer, that you concur with the findings of the committee as I've done, and that I recommend that you award a contract. However, with that, I would also ask that you authorize the administrator on your behalf, if you award that, to talk to the winning bidder on preliminary negotiations.
Right.
So that is what my memorandum is meant to cover.
Thank you, Joe. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
I'd like to make a motion.
Great.
I move that we vote to approve the recommendation of the award of contract designer selection committee to award the Great Sand Lake Sewer Design contract to GHD, as well as authorize the town administrator to engage in preliminary negotiations.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you.
Town administrators report.
The only item I have is announcement of an appointment. With the announcement of the appointment, I also want to take an opportunity to recognize an exceptional colleague of ours. You may recall Leisha McKenna was our Assistant Conservation Agent in the Conservation Department. Prior to that, McKenna, administration was fortunate to have McKenna working in administration for a brief period of time. But as was the case with her predecessor, you can't keep a good employee away from promotion. So I congratulate my colleague in the town of Wellfleet for having the good sense to promote Leisha McKenna to their new position of a conservation agent. So to say it this way, Leisha is now the Amy Usowski of Wellfleet. However, I'm thrilled to announce that with not too much vacancy, I have appointed Lillian Gooding as the next Assistant Conservation Agent. She comes highly recommended and regarded. She's certainly known to our conservation agent. She has great experience through AmeriCorps and similar to other individuals. So I'm pleased to have Lillian join us. She's scheduled to start no earlier than Tuesday, June 4th, but also want to take this chance to congratulate Leisha. It's tough to lose her, but you recognize a great person getting a great opportunity to move up for her and her family.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Select Board members report. Pete?
Nothing.
Don?
Nope.
Jeff?
Nothing.
Michael?
Too many people to thank, but start with the administration, Harwich Fire, Harwich Police, Harwich DPW, and anybody else that was involved in the logistics of Harwich Center and the funeral of Trooper Stephen Culver this past week. An absolutely amazing tribute to Stephen and his family. The Colonel John Mon of the Mass State Police and the entire Mass State Police, the showing was overwhelming and nothing short of amazing. Law enforcement and fire, public safety from all over the Cape, off Cape, out of state. But what an amazing tribute. And the fact that we were able to pull it off in Harwich Center and have that many people for that long a period of time shows tribute to the people that we have in this town. So thank you to all.
Thank you, Michael. Those were going to be my comments, so ditto. What an amazing job, and what a tribute to State Trooper Stephen Culver. Appreciate that by Harwich PD, Harwich Fire, State Troopers. It was amazing. Motion to go on to, I guess we don't have to adjourn technically. We're going to our workshop. For discussion on Select Board goals and objectives, and the information that was distributed included past goals and objectives, comparisons from other towns. So I look to the board to open the discussion in whatever format you would like to, but I think,
Before you get there, Madam Chair, is the only way to gain access to that through our email, the town email?
it should be, yeah, I thought.
Because it wasn't part of the Dropbox. I don't recall.
What are you talking about?
What are you referring to?
Goals and objectives.
Oh, I know,
All the info was emailed, so,
That's what I'm saying, is
yeah.
it
Do
the
you
only
not have
place that,
access to your email?
the only place that my email has access
Well, I have,
is this thing.
I have printouts, so I'll share with you.
I mean, I've seen it, but it's not the same as referring
No,
to it.
I have everybody's. This is Brewster,
Thanks.
this is ours. These are the SMART goals. Let's see, I got Shanna, Weems, Dennis. Those are the hard copies as well.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So, I think one thing that I'll just start then. One thing I'll say from past goals and objectives is we've always struggled to really refine and pinpoint and do something that both the board is able to track well and answer to, and then tie that into the town administrator's performance as well. And I think whatever we can do to improve it, to align ourselves with our top priorities without getting too cumbersome, but yet I like the idea, I think it was Pete who mentioned the SMART goals. I think they give a little bit more detail on how to draft them to make sure that, they're attainable and obviously serve a purpose, and that they can be measured, both by this board measuring itself as well as the TA. So this is one of multiple conversations, but I think it'd be great to get people's input on the info shared and what direction you'd like to go in terms of developing the most current goals.
I'm happy to jump in with a couple thoughts.
Great.
When I look at some of the material that, specifically, I guess, the document that pertains to this board from previous years, I look at that document as a mixture of board objectives and TA objectives, and I'm not sure the two belong on the same document. Clearly, and I'll say it in a simplistic term, the board's goals and objectives are ultimately going to outline a vast majority of the town administrator's goals and objectives. However, I look at the board's objective is the 30,000-foot
Right.
view, and then it gets a little more granular as we assign goals to the town administrator. So I'm not sure they should live on one document together. I think they should be separated out. And I think that led to my confusion when I think it was Jeff alluded to his desire for a vision statement or something to that effect. And I was totally lost that night because I'm thinking, it doesn't belong on the TAs.
No, you're right.
But again, if we look at them as two separate, either documents or projects, then I understand that better, and I think we can get to the end result, which to me is outlining our objectives, but more importantly, giving the town administrator a document in which he knows he needs to work on to successfully complete his job.
Thank you, Pete. Don?
Yeah, I would echo what Pete just said, because, I mean, one of my 10 credos is when everybody's responsible for everything, nobody's responsible for anything. So conflating the two is probably not a good idea. Us having goals that derivatively assign tasks for town administrator to complete within whatever arc we decide that is a good idea. I will repeat what I said through the past several years, though. When you have a Where's Waldo of objectives, where there's like 20, 25 of them, I get that that they can be reassigned downwardly, but there comes a point where you're missing the major objectives if you have that many. I mean, I can't see having more, I mean, 8 or 10 is, I think, what Pete was thinking of, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's like, everything can't be as important as everything else, because you start losing your sense of urgency and priorities.
Jeff?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think goals and objectives are, it's a living document, something that changes on a yearly basis, I would imagine, if not maybe even every 6 months as we check things off. To your point, Pete, I think you're 100% right. The TA's goals and objectives and the select board's goals and objectives should not live on the same page or be conflated or put together in any way. But I strongly believe that the TA should help us develop our goals and objectives. Because as he is the person, or she is that person, whoever sits in that seat, who deals with the day-to-day goings-on of the town, and we're all part-time. It would be a helpful exercise, for me at least, to sit down with the TA and say, okay, where have we been and where do we need to go? So that the select board then can create that document that I think would be only from the select board. So I agree with you, but I think the TA could help an awful lot, the select board develop that document.
Thank you, Jeff.
And so the rest of the board doesn't know this, but I forwarded you a template of a draft of a mission statement and a vision statement. And in my research, there are more towns than not that have mission statements and vision statements. And I'm not saying that we need to jump on this right now, but I think it goes well with what we're trying to do and create. So if you, at the right time,
Right.
if you feel sharing that with the rest of the board,
Sure, yeah.
I'm happy to have that out there for conversation as well.
Yeah, we should tie that into this overall
And
discussion.
again, just draft 1.0 on both, so I'm just making that clear.
Michael?
I'm just not gonna repeat everything everyone else has said. This is year 10, and we've had all different formats of goals and objectives, and I said it before and I'll say it again, actions and deliverables are really the only thing that matter. We can have broad statements if we want. Maybe I'll jump onto it when we talk about format, but I think the format actually works for me in many cases, because when you get into the side, other key stakeholders and primary responsible party, those are the areas for me that if we have a goal and objective, that are gonna determine whether or not the town administrator has the ability to get it done, because he's not gonna do the job. He's gonna direct somebody to do the job. So if it's something related, and this is where I think we gotta get into a more broad conversation, if it's something related to the finance director, who is a direct report, we should probably be establishing the financial goals and objectives and giving them to the finance director, not the town administrator, or including him at all. In a lot of the goals and objectives that we had last year, and it was refreshing, because I thought as I did this, I crossed a lot of them off, and there wasn't a lot there, because in my opinion, they were broad statements that we were never gonna get done, and they felt good because it was on a piece of paper. And recognizing now that all of the other things that we have going on, and one of mine now would be to have a point person for the construction project on wastewater and anything that we're involved in as the leaders on wastewater, that doesn't put the town administrator as that person. So if we're gonna have a construction management, maybe we get somebody that's going to do that from us, from GHD, which I know those conversations have begun, but that wouldn't be a goal of the town administrator. Things like housing, the work with the proposed development on Pine Oaks, that's one that I wrote down under housing and got rid of some of the other ones that weren't on there, because I believe, and other towns do it, on these larger projects, that we should be involved from the incubation of that project, and I know we can't steer them, but once the applications are filed on these 40B, we lose control. So why wouldn't we want to be involved to see what can happen? And I would think that if we're going to have a housing goal, would be something that the town administrator, on behalf of the board, and maybe one board member, that's the goal. So I would be all for having the discussion, or at least a list of the board's ideas on what they'd like to see get done. But more importantly to me would be things for the town administrator that are actually achievable. And when you get into last year's personnel, create a plan in an employee-friendly environment that encourages retention of staff and attracts quality new hires. Well, that's not us. We can support them, but that's not us. That has to come from the town administrator as a plan. So if we assign that as a goal, in a reasonable amount of time, we should see an outline of what that actually means, because we'll have to support it. So we would be the second name on it, not the first name on it. Human resources, we can check that one off. But each and every one of these was something that, putting more thought into it, I don't believe we can measure that. And I think on the measurable piece, whether it's 5 things outside of the day-to-day small task of running the town of Harwich that we would like to get done with an action and deliverable, makes more sense to me than coming up with these long lists and these long charts.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, similarly, a lot of the items you just talked about in terms of housing and wastewater, I had similar comments. I think a couple other things that fall to us, which then fall to Joe in some manners, but already fall to Joe anyway, is improving communication, improving town meeting and preparation, and that starts with us too, but with your help. So I like the idea of 2 different documents, because I think it's a little bit more clear, and yet there are areas that tie together. So I think maybe a starting point, though, is to come up with a list of maybe your top 10 things that you're thinking, and then share them so that we can put them into sort of like a running draft that we can start to amend and define, and maybe split into those documents, or come up with some recommendations for Joe's portion and our portion if we choose to go that way, or we may end up with a blended document. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to build on what Michael was talking about. I dare say we're going to include, because you were big on the deliverables, we're going to include contracts and, taking action within a certain amount of time or whatever. I would like to pitch that, especially with our experience with Brooks Academy, and we didn't get an outcome from one of those contracts that we were looking for after it was awarded, that we should be measuring from cradle to grave in contracts, not from when an RFP went out and was awarded, but also was the goods or service delivered and accepted as such, so that we actually bundle the whole thing. It was an approval at this point, and the timeline gets you all the way to what was delivered, and it either is or it isn't what you asked for. We're not measuring that right now.
Anybody else? Michael?
I'm just thinking about how we're gonna move forward with this, because this is a massive amount of information that as of right now, you have to put together in a readable form. So is it 5 things? Is it 10 things?
I think it's a total of 10, 5 and 5.
Right, okay, so if it's 5 and 5, then would it be reasonable for each board member to send you their top 5?
Yeah.
And then any recommendation on an action and a deliverable on it? And then we can have a conversation about, you know, sorry, I picked one from you, one from you, one from, so maybe it's 6 or 10.
Yeah.
And not everybody gets what they want, but we can come up with a reasonable amount of goals and objectives. I would only ask now, though, on the finance, Joe, your opinion based on contract, on finance, like looking at a 5-year forecast. That would be a goal and objective that we would give to the finance director, and maybe you as a second person. I don't want to bog you down with those goals and objectives, but related to finance, where do you think they land?
So, first I'll answer the hypothetical. I mean, it could go with a finance director. The reality is, however, I've been partnering for the better part of a year with the Division of Local Services on that very type of document. I think my predecessors and preceding finance directors may have done it differently, but I'm actively working on that, and we'll have something hopefully within the next 3 months. And I think it's important for me to have that because the charter presently requires the town administrator to create a comprehensive budget. And so, you know, I can't plan a fiscal year budget in a vacuum. I need to know what's coming up, and you need to know what's coming up. So yes, hypothetically, a 5-year financial outlook is something you could assign to a finance director. The reality is, however, you're going to get one through the town administrator within the next quarter.
Michael?
Just to follow up on that, and we've discussed this, free cash. Now, I would love to get past the discussion and the arguing and how late it is versus how early we can get it done. I wouldn't see that as a goal and objective. I'd like to see the board write a policy on it, and that just be our policy on X date, we're gonna exercise this. So I've taken that off of my list, but on my list would be, and you tell me who should work on this, I think it would be joint, and I've mentioned it for 5 years, the county. What are we getting for money? What are we paying in, and what are we getting out, and what services? And that would also include the state, and that all comes back, in my mind, to reducing the tax burden on the residents by understanding what's available to us. Would that be a financial goal for you, or would that be a financial goal for our finance director?
Well, you had me on financial goal until you said the last one, and the last one to me is when you said the state, meaning I think it's entirely appropriate that the executive branch, the select board, absolutely be the ones to communicate directly with the Commonwealth. You're the leaders of the political subdivision known as the town of Harwich. But anything that intersects with finance, yes, you should rely upon your finance director. However, I'm always going to go back to, unless and until it's changed, the charter requires the town administrator to create a comprehensive budget. And I don't know how I can do that, as well as a capital plan, which is also the responsibility of the town administrator, how I can accomplish those without having the directives and the guidance. But if I can use this as a launching point for a moment, as you talk about your goals and objectives for our town, and I think you've all touched upon it, I'll be able to give information over the coming weeks because we're past town meeting and building towards closing out the current fiscal year and launching into the next fiscal year with an eye towards the future fiscal years beyond that. So I've already have an understanding of what's coming down the pike for all of us over the coming 12 months. And as you've talked about, your goals and objectives can be immediate, starting immediately with some checkpoints or some deliverables due in the middle of the year. But there should also be, I think, an eye towards you want X number of things, you have X number of goals, and the objectives that tie to those that should be accomplished so that this time next year, you look back and say, we had a comprehensive discussion and output on free cash or other financial elements. And then as you do that, and as you rely upon me as town administrator saying, as an example, fiscal year 26 marks the first year of the 3-year agreements for all of our collective bargaining agreements. Now, I'm already aware of that, it's already factored into the 5-year plan I'm working on, but you can build measurable goals for yourselves on the upcoming collective bargaining, and then deliver that to me and certainly other executive managers. Did that help?
A little bit. Can I close?
Yeah.
Close for now?
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned comprehensive budget, your requirement to give us that, because for the first year in 9, I'm gonna take it out of my goals and objectives, because you have to do it.
Correct.
As everything else that's in your contract or in the charter that you have to do shouldn't be a goal and objective of the board, but it always has been. Maybe to make the list longer, I'm not sure why, but, or to give you points, but taking it out.
Jeff, did you have a comment?
I did, and thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is going to be a big undertaking, I think. I also think that if we were to give our top 5 right now, there'd probably be 3 that we all agree upon that, are on the same piece of paper, and maybe 2 are. Where I'm having a little bit of a problem is understanding, like, I'm 100% with you, Pete, with 30,000 feet, and then the granular level. But I kind of see, at least in the last year for me, that we go between the two,
Yeah, they.
right? And
You mean the board does?
the board does, the select board. We
They
go
cross
between.
over,
They
yeah.
cross over, and in some instances, I think to myself, like, what are we doing down here? And some instances, I think we need to get down a little bit more into the dirt with certain things. So I have a little trouble with that. And my 2 examples would be, for me, the Monomoy Regional School System agreement I don't even know if it's a goal or an objective, or if it's, I want to get our, you listed that.
I
I'm-
did.
I'm
I
sure
listed that,
Probably
yeah.
everybody else did.
Yeah.
But then for us as a board to get on the same page of exactly what we need and, or what we want to see as a goal or an objective, obviously, it would be a better deal for the town of Harwich taxpayers. How we go about that, I don't know, but that I would view as like a longer-term discussion. We have $7 million of outstanding owner-unknown taxes. That's another big one for me, because I can see that putting money back into the pockets of the taxpayers. And to me, that's kind of somewhere in the middle. But the flow of information between the board, the TA, the board, the FinCom, the board, that's immediate. That's a goal that should be checked off and in play sooner rather than later.
So I think.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
understand where
no,
we're
I,
going with
I
all
think it's a
this.
good, I think it's a good point, and, but just on that note,
Sure.
because I think it is such an important piece of moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
is that we're slated to have a joint meeting with FinCom
Correct.
in the next couple weeks, because we need to have a conversation, we need to have a better approach to sharing information, or understanding, developing a better timeline for that, which involves, again, crossing over, involves this board, but the requirements by the charter, the town administrator. So that conversation, although I get why you would put that on your goals and objectives, especially after this past year, I'm hoping that you won't have to, because we'll already be working on it, but we can certainly track it. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And for the town administrator's benefit, if we don't know where we're going,
Right.
it's going to be impossible for anybody who sits in your seat to know what we're looking for and how to execute the things that are important to us. And everybody in any organization, from the top all the way down, deserves the opportunity to know exactly what is expected of them day to day, month to month, and year to year.
Right, and
And
on that note, that's why I think having, to Pete's point about 2 different documents, but they
100%.
will cross over, and that's what I was saying is, here's Joe's, this is what we see for Joe, here's what we see for us. But part of that, some of those things on our list, Joe's
course.
gonna help us,
Of course.
right? But some of them, he'll drive, because to Michael's point, he'll delegate certain things that we want, but we're looking at him to control it, but he'll need to delegate it. But I agree with you. I mean, I think that's what we need to do, is better define
Yeah.
what we expect the town administrator and how we're planning on assessing that, and also accountability for ourselves.
And lastly, I'd say that I've learned the wheels of government certainly turn a lot more slowly than the wheels of private business. and anything else that I've been involved in. And I would just hope that this board is dedicated to taking the low-hanging fruit and making those implementations immediately, and then triaging or titrating the things that are gonna take a little longer and things that are gonna take even more time. And not get bogged down in the discussion of it and have multiple meetings about our goals and objectives. Let's go.
Right. Yeah, I hope that we can get this flushed out.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to that end, I'd suggest, I'm not sure how anybody else is going to feel about this, but everything's not equal to everything, and it isn't contemporaneous with a fiscal year arc for us on everything. For instance, we are stuck in an endless loop with the discussion about what constitutes an equitable arrangement with Monomoy schools. We keep saying that we're going to do something. We keep waiting until October or November, at which point we realize, heck, we got a town meeting that's coming up. So that's actually one that would have, a deadline for a measurable meeting of the goal for the summertime, so that we can get the discussion off the ground, because it has to do with another entity that we don't control at all. Two entities.
So that, just to talk to that specifically, that's on my radar too, about having a conversation and opening up. We talked about the need for that in a couple of board meetings ago.
Yeah.
And we said we would wait till town meeting got over. So here we are trying to attack the biggest items, which are goals and objectives, having a joint meeting with FinCom, that conversation.
I'm just saying that that's
Yeah, no, you're right.
measurable objective that we
yes.
really want to do short-term.
Right.
It's not going to be
Right, it's not
within the
some-
year.
Right, exactly.
And to your point, after reading what the candidates for the select board spoke about in the paper,
School committee?
yeah, about this agreement specifically, none of them were in favor of even sitting down and having a conversation. So at this point, it's on us to make that phone call and get at the table, and at least open the lines of communication, because to your point, yeah, this is something that should happen in a short amount of time. But I think in order to get done what the ultimate goal for the town of Harwich taxpayers would be, it's probably going to take a little bit longer, than a year.
And you're the liaison to the school committee if you want to go that route.
No, I get that, although
Just saying.
I think I've been characterized as bad cop a couple of times in that conversation. I'm just suggesting that we have to have something more than me going to him and say, this is not fair. I mean, we probably.
That hasn't worked?
That has not worked.
Oh,
It did work with Steve, but he's not here now. So the bottom line is, we would have to develop what we consider to be a fair and measurable way of approaching this in order to make that approach, because I just can't barge into their meeting and say, what are you going to do to help us?
Well, no, and Charles Grutzka just sent a very
a lot.
detailed analysis of the monies and the financial disparities.
And the
so-
models that are
Yeah.
used elsewhere.
And I think his argument is spot on. It's not about today, it's about the future, right?
That's right.
And does Chatham, one of their, I believe in the document you sent us, one of their goals as a board is to support excellent education, right?
Right.
Well, do they want to be in a position in 3 to 5 years when the town of Harwich cannot support the current formula?
Right.
And therefore, there's all of a sudden a reduction in force or a decrease on their budget. If they don't want to get to that point, then now's the time to sit
That's
at the
right.
table and have the discussion about what the formula looks like for years down the road.
Right.
And if I can quickly jump around, to Michael's point about deliverables, I totally agree. And so Jeff, to kind of answer you, to me, when we talk about what gets assigned to a TA or even the finance director, those are goals or objectives with deliverables, right? Not that we shouldn't have some form of deliverable, but really, again, it's the 30,000-foot stuff where the Monomoy Regional Agreement is one of those things. That should just be a blanket goal. We're not going to get granular on that yet because we can't get granular yet. And it does involve us, or it's going to take us to be involved to move the needle. So it's not going to fall on Joe or any town administrator to get it accomplished. But it's not going to be assigned a deliverable either. It's just going to be a goal or objective that we work on as a crew with hopefully the other community. So I look at the town administrator or the finance director's goals as being deliverables, and I would love to see it fall into that 5 to 8 number maximum. Because again, once we get over that number, it's just not going to, be realistic for anybody to achieve, because again, they do have day-to-day operations to run, as we call it at work, run the business, right? They have to run the business and then work on these other aspects that we want to see happen. So, and I'll finish with this thought. The last thing I want to see us do is waste time, either for us or for the town administrator, set goals, and then the document goes off to the side and we bring it back up in a year from now and say, what the hell happened, right? It has to be that living document that we continuously look at as a group to make sure progress is being made, to hold ourselves accountable, to hold the town administrator accountable, and hold the finance director accountable, to make sure those things are happening in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and I think part of that should be too, that two things. We also have an ongoing project list. We should maybe make it a goal of ours to revisit those maybe quarterly or sooner, but we should come up with some type of a schedule so that we're constantly checking in on those things, checking in on the goals and objectives, checking in on the project list that, we've made a lot of progress on, but there are a lot of things on that, to that point. So I think there's a lot of places that, even on procurement, Joe's trying to make strides on procurement. So there's stuff that he's aware of that we may not be aware of in the day-to-day, but checking in on those things, I think, is helpful, so. And everybody needs some help tracking, because,
Well, to that point, if I may, and to build off of Michael's point about setting policy for date certain things, that will help the TA, that'll help the
Right.
staff, that'll help everybody downstream understand what we're looking for. As I mentioned before, I think there needs to be a date certain evaluation time, and I think it should be just before town meeting, the week before town meeting, so that we are doing our evaluations, and it's consistent, it's there, and we know what's gonna happen, free cash certification, so forth and so on. But I would urge us to come up with a couple of policies that we feel would streamline the operation. And if that's in our purview, then I think that's where we should be focusing.
We're a policy board, Jeff, you're spot on. That's what we're here
Well,
for.
I agree, 100%, but I haven't set any policies in the last year, and I want to start setting them.
Shame on you.
well, and I think another piece that we probably, I'll at least include it in some of mine. I probably have top 10, they're the basics and that you always think of, but another one is to, assess our assets and see if we've got things that we could look at harder, and then to also coastal resiliency, plan in for rising floodwaters and structurally what we need to address. So that continues to change, and that's a huge, huge cost to the town, so.
So what would you feel are our next, what's my action?
I would like everybody to send their top, I would say split it just to make it easier, so that I can come to you with 2 documents, and then we can decide how to approach it from there. But give me, your top 5, I'll even go to 10 if you want to, but top 5 for the TA, top 5 for the board, and then I prefer that if we could keep it to 5, because there's a lot, there's 5 of us, so there's 25 potential things on each list, and then start from there, and then the next conversation, which I don't think you're available next week, right? You're out of,
No, I think it was this coming Wednesday, I'm not available.
yeah, okay. So, right,
I'm not here next Wednesday.
So let me ask you this. We've posted a meeting for Wednesday. We could have a follow-up, or we could wait, and you could have time to send me stuff and give it a week. What do you think?
I get you stuff tonight, if the rest of the board feels that having another meeting on Wednesday would be beneficial.
Michael?
Jeff being semi-retired, I don't fall into that same category right now.
Neither do I.
Really?
But I would say, I would give it a week. I mean, we're gonna have to get the information to you, you're gonna have to put it together.
Right.
So I
So
would
we
give it
could-
at least a week.
so
I'm not
we'll-
trying to delay it, but I would wait at least a week.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because Wednesday's going to be here in a blink of an eye.
It's
and
also
so-
Memorial Day weekend.
I'm gone the following Wednesday.
Okay, so we'll talk about it at our next meeting on the 28th,
Just
Tuesday. Right. All right, is that good?
Works for
Okay.
me.
So if you just send me your 5 and 5, and then I'll put something together. All right?
Good.
Okay. Can I get a
Motion to adjourn.
moved and seconded? All in favor?
Aye.